Now, we can't stop talking about Rwanda. The government's going to give even more money to secure an immigration treaty. The talk is up to £15 million, although that is disputed by the Home Office.
So, member of the London Assembly, Shaun Bailey, joins us now.
Lord Bailey,
Lord Bailey, come on, let's not do Shaun down like that.
Do we bow?
Not anymore.
OK. Lord Bailey of where?
Put it this way, my mum refuses to call me Lord Bailey.
And what is your title?
Right.
What's your full title, Shaun, now?
My title is Lord Bailey of Paddington. I was born in the old Paddington Hospital.
Round the corner?
Yes, just round the corner.
What are your thoughts on this Rwanda issue? Because obviously it got blown out by the Supreme Court. We weren't allowed to put asylum seekers on the aeroplanes because of this non-refoulement process. And now we're spending another £15 million. Our viewers are furious, Shaun, that we're throwing more money at a problem that looks like it's not going to be the solution.
So here's the real deal. Rwanda is the wrong focus. If you look at the number of people on boats, it's a fraction of the people who arrive here legally. So what we really should be doing is twofold. One, we should be looking at our legal routes and what do we do to change them. And secondly, we should be using the laws we already have in place to deal with the boats. We have rules around Clause 51, which you could interpret differently. They're being overly interpreted, people would argue. So lots of people are having their claims successful. And actually, Clause 51 would probably say they shouldn't be successful. The point is, we already have the mechanism. Let's use that. Rwanda will not work. The courts will fight and frustrate it. From their point of view, they are correct. And I speak to many people in the laws who point out some of the legal loopholes that Rwanda will fail on.
So why is Rishi Sunak so useless on this if it's actually a lot more simple?
There's two things I'd say. It isn't Rishi, it's the whole political firmament. Let's remember, everything that the government has tried to do, somebody else was frustrated. We have people take the government to court. We've had the Labour Party continually tell the government they're useless without providing an alternative. And the important thing here, if you are a voter, if you're a swing voter in the general election, look for the alternative. Don't just listen to the rhetoric.
Do you see any... if the Tories don't sort this, Shaun, do you think they're going to pay a very heavy price at the next general election? Because we were talking to Mark Francois earlier. He was campaigning in his constituency in Essex at the weekend. He said it was way above the cost of living issue was the small boats and the government's pathetic failure to get to grips with it.
What Mark Francois is signalling, it's in particular areas of the country.
Right.
Now, the worry for the Tories, it is very particular in some of their stronger areas, the South Coast, etc., that could work against them. But in other places, like all of the major urban conurbations, London, Manchester, Birmingham, it's just not on the agenda.
Right.
But the real thing where the Tories will win or lose this argument is by forcing Keir Starmer to give detail. The words legal routes, what does that mean?
I know,
How many does that mean? You know, what is he going to do with Rwanda? What's he going to do with all the money we're giving to France? Whatever the 15 million looks like, you know, you sit home and 15 million, that's a lot of money. That is chicken feed compared to what we're giving to France. What are we getting for that money? These are the questions that any government that wants to win a general election has to answer.
I agree with that, but do you think, is there a sense that it's the government are in power and they've kept promising on Rwanda, they've been thwarted by the courts and they could be the House of Lords, where you'll be no doubt having a battle on this soon. Is there a sense that people think it's not about Labour, it's about the Tories because they've been in power for 13 years and they haven't stopped the boats?
Yes, of course they are, because especially if you're neutral, if you're thinking I could go one way or the other, you have to look at the record of the people in charge and weigh it up against what's being said, and a record is far easier to measure. Far easier to
So do you think that part of this issue then is that Rishi Sunak is not communicating sufficiently well, that there's only so much he can do on this? As you say, it's about the lawyers on the other side who don't want these people to be sent home or sent to Rwanda, and it's about Labour blocking it. He doesn't seem to make much capital in terms of rhetoric around that issue.
He absolutely should. He should point out what he can legally do, what he's tried to do, and most importantly, who's frustrated him. Like, for instance, you talk about, here Labour talk about the financial situation the country's in, but nobody points out they backed every deal the government made, everything the government did around lockdowns, around the amount of money spent, Labour was pro that.
They wanted more.
Exactly. So the idea that somehow the Tories have done a different spending deal to what they would have done is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I believe once an election comes around, more people will immediately want to know, well, where's Keir Starmer and the Labour Party?
And they have voted against every single measure that the government have tried to bring in to stop this huge surge of illegal migration.
Exactly.
Everything.
And again, and without an alternative. So what Labour are good at traditionally is opposition politics. They are masters of it, the best in the world. But the problem of opposition politics is you can't run a country that way. And when people ask that very direct question, what would have you done? There's no answer there. And I think what we're relying on now is the wisdom of the British electorate. And I'd have to say that they're generally pretty smart.
Your Prime Minister is deeply unpopular. This is the problem. You know, repeated research and polls show that he is at the bottom of the list of popularity. Nigel Farage is waiting in the wings, Shaun, to come in and save the Conservative Party. How do you feel about that?
Look, I would say all things are possible, aren't they? I mean, who would have thought Lord Cameron would be the Foreign Secretary at this point?
Who wanted him to be?
But look, I'm a big fan, actually. Yeah. But the point is...
Are you? Why?
Well, they used to work with him.
He brought me into politics. I used to work with him all the time.
What does he bring to that role?
Masses and masses of charm and experience. And when you're on the international stage, those two things are very important.
You mean there isn't any charm and experience in the current cabinet?
You'd be hard-pressed to find some charm in this cabinet.
Kemi Badenoch? She'd have been great at that job.
Kemi is a good friend of mine. She is great. But again, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone with Cameron's mix of experience and charm. Very hard-pressed.
What about Farage coming back to the Tory party? But Rishi said it's a broad church.
All things are possible, but I don't think while Rishi's around.
No.
But there's a challenge for Farage. He would have to demonstrate a slightly broader appeal. Most people watching this now love Nigel. We all do. But the point is, he'd have to appeal beyond that immediate group of people. And I believe that's possible. Rishi is the Prime Minister now. He is the man with his hands on the tiller, and he has an opportunity to appeal to those people before Farage even's back in again.
Sarah Vine, who was here earlier, she said Nigel's not a team player.
Well, look, if Nigel got to the point where his ability to team play or not was an issue, he'd already have won. But the issue is this. Come off the man, come off the hour. You'd have to step up and change your tactic. I am imagining Nigel behaves the way he does because of what he's involved in. The minute you are running a party, all of a sudden you realise my job here is to corral these cats. There's many cats wandering all over the place. And that means a change in personal tactic. If you can't manage that tactic, you will not win that job.
Do you think he's got those skills? Because when you're talking about charisma and communication, Nigel is he's brilliant.
If you ask me, has Nigel got those skills, charisma, communication, I'd tell you yes all day long.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that he would have led us out of the European Union? They laughed when he made that suggestion. Here we are now.
Exactly.
He's the most significant politician of the last 30 years.
Arguably he is. The issue would be he'd need to develop an additional set of skills very quickly. He'd also have to deal with a press that would be largely ranged against him, and he'd have to demonstrate to people who are not on his side that actually he is on their side.
Yeah. Now, he's no fan of the House of Lords, because now I know you're probably not glued to the jungle, Shaun, but this is what he said, and I know that's true because it's written in my column in the Daily Mail. He said, in conversation with somebody in the jungle last night, you get £300. I pointed out, in fact, it's £342 a day for turning up. I went to the Lords 2 months ago. A guy I served with in Brussels in the European Parliament, I think I know who it is, but I didn't name him, invited me to lunch. I said, what's it like here? He said, it's the best retirement home in the country. I do a bit of paperwork, sign for the money, go for lunch in the subsidised dining room. He goes to House of Lords at 2:30pm for the opening debates, then it's clear off home. Very nice work if you can get it.
Is
that what it is for you? Is it like that for you?
Because I'm there much later than that.
Right.
Look, the deal is this. If you remove the House of Lords, you remove one of the greatest scrutiny bodies in the world and one of the best refining bodies in the world. So the government come up with all manner of laws. We are the people who go through those laws and make sure they actually work. If you're pro-Rwanda or anti-Rwanda, we will make it work by making sure it's legal. That's the first thing. The second thing is, as well, we have stopped this country traditionally making huge mistakes because we slow down the debate and go through it line by line in a way that they cannot do in the Commons. They simply don't have the time. So the two houses together actually perform a real function for the country.
But it is the second largest legislative assembly in the world after the Chinese People's Republic. That is ridiculous.
I'll tell you why that isn't true.
No, it is. The Senate of the United States is a revising chamber, 100 senators. There's over 800 members of the House of Lords.
I'll tell you why that isn't true. And you may have a problem with the second half, but that's the debate to be had. Not all of those barons and baronesses sit. Now, should they? There's a big argument, maybe they should. But right just now, we are a smaller number of people doing even more work than the MPs do. Let's be clear, the MPs do a great deal of work and they have a different remit in the world because of their constituents. But we're actually quite a small number of people doing a lot of things. So the guy who Nigel spoke to, who said he swans around, good for him. The rest of us, mountains of reading. For instance, you know why I'm sat here today? Because this morning I was up so early going through my paperwork for the week. Now, some lords and baronesses busy bees. Some of us, clearly, not so much.
But there's too many people there, Shaun. There's so many people that go into politics because they're not that bothered about being a politician, but they just want to have that nice, cushy peerage at the end of the day, and, like you say, and a very well-funded retirement home.
Let's look at it from the other side. So you're looking at a body that has a huge amount of experience. I'd argue more experience than any other single body in the country. We've got ex-ministers, we've got charity experts, all manner of people in there. So they're offering that expertise to the nation at what is, I would believe, a relatively low cost. Now, if there's too many people in there, that isn't for me to say or not. But I'd argue we need quite a few people in there just to carry the workload. The amount of revisions that we've had, the amount of amendments that we've had is a great workload, and you need people to go through it. And the last thing I say as well, the Lords has a very, very proud tradition of bringing in as many people from this great nation into the heart of government and seeing what it's actually like. Again, a function that MPs are too busy to carry out.
Yeah. Can we ask you about the BBC licence fee and whether you think it should be going up? And should Rishi Sunak step in to say no, it shouldn't?
9%, biggest increase ever.
I'll sum it up in one word, that's indefensible.
Well said.
Indefensible. If it was any other body asking for this money, somebody would pile in and say we can't do that. And we have to ask ourselves, is the BBC licence morally correct? There's a strong argument it isn't.
Do you think it's outdated?
Is it, I was about to say that, is it relevant? You know, you're in a world now where young people have to pay for all manner of subscriptions. Would they pay for the BBC if it's asked? But the most important thing is, I think the BBC has lost a lot of support because it effectively argues against the people who are most likely to support it. It is Middle Britain. Yeah. It is my mum, your mum, who are most likely to support the BBC, but they're the people who are pushed to the edge because they don't have the right thought processes. If you asked the people of this country today if they wanted to pay the BBC licence, even at a reduced rate, forget an inflated rate, I think you get a resounding no.
OK.
Fascinating. Well, enjoy the House of Lords.
Absolutely.
Bound to see you there.
Can you just go and kick Rishi out and take his job, Shaun?
I'm frontline politics is a contact sport, so I'm
Would you
here
ever
to
go
support
back
Rishi.
to it? Would you go back to frontline politics?
Yes, but right just now, I think my job and everybody's job, certainly in parties, to support Rishi to get it right.
Oh, you're very good. Well, I think frontline politics needs you almost as much as GB News needs you, but not quite.